Chad Williams is the Co-Artistic Director of WonderSpark Puppets. He has written, directed, and performed over 15 solo puppet shows and will be presenting his show Fox Fables at the 2023 National Puppetry Festival. He's also the author of the book 50 Hand Puppet Techniques, Hidden Secrets and Tricks Revealed that just won an award from UNIMA. I talked to Chad about all of these things and more on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet. Well, Chad Williams, welcome to Under the Puppet.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Grant.
Excellent. Do you remember your first exposure to puppetry? The first time you saw puppets?
It's funny you say that. I think those memories would be gone if I hadn't become a puppeteer and really thought hard about it. But my first experience to puppetry was television puppetry. I grew up in the mountains, and we had only 3 channels of television that would reach us. And on one of them, on Sundays, when I was waiting for cartoons to come on, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it would be Black and White Zorro, followed by a Ginsu knife infomercial, followed by this program called the Little Old Lady Next Door. And on this program, it was like public access, it felt, where somebody was doing traditional non-moving mouth hand puppets, telling stories of like books like Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, and definitely a lot of like rabbits. And I still have yet to find out who this puppeteer was in Buffalo, New York, but they had wooden, beautifully carved hand puppet heads. And at the time, I didn't really care. Didn't really care for it. And I was like, nah, like, come on, I want to watch Alvin and the Chipmunks and like all the other cartoons that came after that. But it definitely, it was definitely captivating. So that was my first experience. I know a lot of people that grew up in the same generation were watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, and my first time on Sesame Street, I got to admit that I'd never actually watched it as a kid, but that's just because I never got PBS. But television puppetry was my way in, and hand puppetry specifically.
Yeah, I love those old, because there's really nothing like it today, but those old kind of local puppet shows, you just think of how many hundreds of kids saw those growing up. They can really be inspiring. I mean, as a kid, you weren't really that into it, but later on, now look what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I look back, and it was definitely because it was puppet theater. There's some kind of like raw energy to community television, like public access television. So sometimes I was not enjoying the story. I was like, this, the kids can have like opinions, especially kids who grow up to be artists, right? But I was definitely like, sometimes I was so into it that it was very surprising at the time. And this was when I was like 4 or 5.
Now, I know that you studied, like when you got into college, you studied filmmaking and stuff. But as a kid, were you creative at all? Were you working on creative projects like drawing or art or anything like that?
Not at all, actually. I feel like when I got into puppetry, I looked around at all these amazing artists who were like lifelong puppeteers, who were like, I knew from the day I was born I wanted to be a puppeteer, like Ronnie up in Canada, saying like, yeah, when I was like 5, I just opened a dictionary and pointed to a random page and it said puppeteer, and that was my entire life's goal. I wanted to be a puppeteer. No, it was quite the opposite. So I was not into arts. My parents and my teachers would try and force me, but I was just a late bloomer. And looking at I have a kid now. My oldest one is like 10. He's the same exact way. He's like, no, don't tell me what to do. I will figure it out. And, slowly, maybe a little slower than his peers. I was the same way. Slowly he'll get into whatever he's going to, be into. My mom, when I was very little, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, gave me this picture book called Leo the Late Bloomer. And it was this lion who, who we would categorize as like special needs now, who definitely like doesn't fit in, and doesn't have the same milestones emotionally and developmentally as the others. So anyway, so I was into music. I did bands and orchestra in high school. But my senior year, I got to finally take an art class, and I was just in love. And so when I got to college, I was like, "Give me theater, give me drawing. I want all the things." And even though I felt like I didn't specialize in that stuff, I came to it way later. I really felt like this is my home, and this is what I want to do. Spend the rest of my life doing.
Yeah, well, that's great. And you say that your parents were kind of trying to move you in that direction. Were your parents creative at all?
No, but I take that back. My mom's as a kindergarten teacher was definitely creative in that she's always doing these DIY projects with her classes and always trying to get us to do her like she would invent like interesting sports out of like trash, let's say, like a bent like pantyhose on top of like a bent wire coat hanger, could be like a tennis racket, and she grew up extremely poor in Buffalo. She was the daughter of immigrants coming from Poland and England. So and she was like a family of 13, so they had like zero money. Her father was a barber and her mother worked in a laundry shop. So she was always trying to get us into the all right, well, just use this, and all right, just take some of this, use what you have on hand. I was just more more one of those kids that probably on the spectrum. We didn't test for autism back in those days, but I was more just like very obstinate, just let me do my thing. Don't tell me what to do. One of the worst students in the world. But when I was ready, like in my adult life, when I was ready to be a good student, I was able to find and connect with very amazing teachers in puppetry and these incredible mentors. So when I was ready to listen, I took in and absorbed everything that they had to offer. And I poured that into the teachings that I do when I teach other puppeteers today.
Excellent. And I don't want to seem like I'm glossing over it because you did say also that you were making music. You were playing an instrument. What sort of instruments were you playing when you were in school?
Well, when you have no talent, they put you in percussion.
Me
And
too. That's where I was.
oh, great, man. So in the 80s and 90s, so there's a gender divide, where they would put you in the schools, public schools. So if you were a boy and you were in percussion, you were just good for like whacking things. And if you were a girl, they would stick you in melodic percussion like piano and bells and marimba. So I had the bass drum, I had the snare drum, and I loved rhythm and I liked getting to percussion. Eventually, I did timpani, which is like an instrument where you can adjust the pitch of, which is kind of melodic percussion. But I was basically good at just whacking things. And so I had a lot of experience in orchestra and band for like 15 years, playing and immersing myself in all these amazing instrumental, these classic tunes that I would hear in Looney Tunes, occasionally watching cartoons. But no, I wasn't an artist, and I'm a terrible builder. Unlike some of the amazing puppeteers we have in our country and around the world who are just like, yeah, I just like grabbed this part of my couch and I made this incredible marionette with no training at all, like my friend Madison J. Cripps.
Yeah, well, we all. I'm a horrible builder as well. Well, I that's why
Mm,
I'm friends with a lot of builders. That's
there you
what
go.
I do. So when you get to you went to the State University of New York in Fredonia,
Mhm.
and you got a BFA in Media Arts in filmmaking and media. So what kind of pushed you towards that direction to get that degree?
I'll tell you. So, my senior year, we were finally allowed to pick a course, and my friend Steve said, "Hey, this easiest course ever. Check this out. You got to take this art course where you work on computers." All I did was make business cards, and they gave me an A, and I was like, "Oh, it's amazing! I'm all for that." So at the same time, I took theater, psychology, and I was taking this media arts course, which is like multimedia. So we worked with like early Photoshop, this program called Corel. That was my first entry, and I loved it, and I really excelled. I was printing out these amazing, surreal, weird things. Like so when somebody comes late to art, all the stuff they make is just raw and experimental and crazy. But I was really into it, and so my parents, like many parents, saw an opportunity to be like, "Ooh, let's push him towards the art schools." I had to go to a state university school, which is their one rule, and so I applied to get into this experimental multimedia program in Fredonia, which does not exist anymore. And that's where I met Z. who showed me like who get was my window into puppetry. But that was my first foray into making making video, making theater, making film, and so I kind of fell into this crowd of like experimental anarchist filmmakers and multimedia makers, and we were just experimenting with everything. None of our stuff was any good, but that's great. It's great to fail and have a place where you're just like having fun, and whatever you're coming up with, it doesn't matter. And that's what I feel like people are talking about. Like, should we send our kids to college? Yes or no? In this year right now in 2023, and college was that for me, was like creating this weird, interesting maybe stuff that I not like disown, but I'm like, all right, none of that was any good looking back. But you have to start somewhere. And for me, for being like a creative person, that was definitely my first like lessons that I'm learning by myself of like, was that successful? Did I get something across? And learning film as a language and as a medium to tell stories. So after that, I was in a company, like a small production company, with all my fellow improvisers and filmmakers, where we made feature length films. And I was in there feeling like, oh man, this is it. We're gonna make it. I have my ice cream factory job on the side, but I'm gonna be a filmmaker. This is it. And really going nowhere. Going nowhere. So eventually, through Z, I wound up in New York City working on like legit TV and film for a time, but it burned me out, and I was really looking for something different when Z, who is a lifelong puppeteer, said, "Hey, come with me up to Vermont, and and I need a second hand for this slam piece that I'm doing." And that was my first puppet performance. It was up in the Sandglass Puppets in the Green Mountains Festival, doing 8 mini performances in this beautiful outdoor garden with my future wife, who is also my first puppetry mentor.
Excellent. Well, we're definitely going to talk about the puppetry. I have so much. I have two questions I want to ask. The first one is, you gloss over this ice cream factory job.
Oh, buddy.
That just sounds fun. What was? I mean, because we all listen as artists, and trying to get our stuff going. We all have to take, jobs that, to pay rent, or whatever.
Mhm.
So tell me about this ice cream factory job, because it sounds fun, but I'm sure it was not fun.
It was educational.
Yeah.
It was very educational. So I worked in an ice cream factory for 3 months, and it was good pay. It was really good pay. Our first day, my first day on the job, I nearly died. They gassed us all. So, in an ice cream factory, everything is cooled with ammonia gas because it gets extremely cold, and they have huge, giant tanks of it with pipes running all over the place throughout this factory. And the factory is extremely loud. There's intensely loud machines happening, doing their thing all over the place. And there's let's say like 500 people working. So my first day in the factory, after I gotten like barely any training, I'm sitting at the ice cream machine, the ice cream sandwich machine, and I'm like, okay, I have to make sure that the cookies, which are actual graham crackers, are stocked, and I have to make sure that everything's moving slowly. So I'm just going to sit here with my giant rubberized headphones, these earmuffs on, so I don't hear anything, and I'm just gonna sit here. Okay, I got this. And then I start to smell something, right? I'm like, what's this smell? Well, it's my first day here. Okay, this must be normal. And then the smell gets worse and worse. And I'm like, this is kind of like reminding me of the time that I was in Hawaii on like a semi-live volcano. It smells kind of like sulfur. Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's getting worse. Oh, this stinks. Oh man. Well, I guess it's just another day. No, it's finally somebody grabs me by the shoulder and spins me around and says, "Get out of here." There was an ammonia leak, and I was the last person to find out. Everybody on my machine had evacuated. Nobody told me. I had my back to everybody. I was up against a wall. Finally, somebody mercifully grabbed me and spun me around and dragged me out of there, because ammonia, if you breathe in enough of it, it'll kill you. It's poison.
Yeah.
So to get out of the factory, we were in a basement level, so you need to climb like 300 steps to get out. And because there's 500 people trying to get out all at the same time, we all are walking in an orderly fashion, breathing in all the ammonia, which is getting worse and worse on our way out. So we're just standing, huffing and puffing this awful gas, gasping for air as we're like slowly taking step after step to get out of there to go to the parking lot. And once we got to the parking lot, everybody was fine, kind of looking around, laughing, being like, "Oh man, we almost died. Oh man, whoo. Okay, what's gonna happen now? Are they gonna shut down? You know?" So after like an hour of hanging in the parking lot, they're like, "Okay, back to work," and you go down there and proceed as normal. This is my introduction to, and like everybody in the factory, once you figure out how to work the machines, it gets kind of boring.
Well, let me ask you this: after 3 months of that, do you still like ice cream, or did that sour you on ice cream?
Oh, no. No. So when you work in an ice cream factory, and we had several factories in town. We had the peanut butter factory and the dog food factory, which, by the way, released the same smell, release their smells on the same day. So in Fredonia, you would get dog food peanut butter smell all the time. It's
Oh.
just terrible. So when you worked in an ice cream factory, they use vanilla for everything. And vanilla ice cream gets everywhere, including on your clothes and on your shoes. We had these long lab coats, but you would just get it caked into everywhere. So I couldn't eat ice cream sandwiches. I still don't want to, because I know how they're made, and just ice cream in general for a long time. Ice cream sandwiches, by the way, you know how like the sandwich part is kind of like this gooey, interesting mess where if you hold an ice cream sandwich, you'll like pull your finger away, it'll like peel off a little bit on your finger.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah.
regular graham crackers that have just been soaking in vanilla ice cream for however long in the freezer until it gets to you. Knowing that grossed me out so much that I just could not take another ice cream sandwich. It took me like 10 years. But anyway, I'm sure every puppeteer has a very interesting, life experiences, and like that's just like one of them.
Yeah, well, I love it. I love it. We rarely get to talk about ice cream on here. So, but the second question I wanted to ask was about your degree. Is how do you feel that you got this degree in filmmaking and multimedia? How has that helped your puppetry like today?
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
Not at
Absolutely.
all,
Nope,
really.
nothing. Nope. So, well, like I said, it was a great place to try and fail. The language of film and the language of theater are two completely different things. So, it was an epiphany for me, feeling like I'm trying and trying and trying to be a filmmaker, but take a look back. It's like when you finally watch your film with other people, it kind of shows you like, were you successful or not? And I made several documentaries, and I feel like that was more my jam. But no, I just was never successful at filmmaking. Even when I was just a cog in the machine, when I was working Law and Order SVU, working on some USA TV shows, it was still just extremely hard. And it's just a part of, I guess, who I am or how my brain's wired, but I just couldn't get it right. So when I finally hit theater in my life and started learning like, oh, actually, there's rules to improv, there's specific rules for writing papers, and scripts. There's rules for theater, and there's definitely rules for how to engage with different audiences. And once I started to learn all those, that was more my jam. I feel like that felt more natural to me, and like slowly learning from all these incredible puppetry mentors really helped me on my way. Like when I was first starting out, I thought I knew what kids thought was funny, but it took a great friend of mine, Honey Goodenough, who was a professional clown, to sit me down and be like, "Actually, no, yeah, these are the 5 things that kids think are funny, and this is it. And then if you want to do this and a variation of this, or you want to do like any of those, only use them once, Chad. Remember, rules of threes and all these things." So I'm like, "All right, taking notes." Like, "Oh, good, all right, excellent." So yeah, theater and live theater is definitely my jam. I love hand puppetry. It's a very specific type of it's the form is kind of unique in that it's expected that there's going to be some play between the puppets and the audience. When people think about puppetry in this country, usually they think about like either Sesame Street or Punch and Judy, usually Sesame Street. That's one of the incredible things that American puppeteers are known throughout the world for doing, is like TV puppetry. Jim Henson really kicked it off and was an innovator, and some incredible works have come from that and continue to roll out of that style today.
Right. And so that first show that you did with Z, and this is Z Briggs for anybody who's listening, the first show you did with Z, was hand puppets?
No, actually, the first puppet show that I ever did was tabletop. It was a tabletop
Oh,
toy
tabletop.
theater.
Okay.
Yeah, Z is from Leroy, New York, which is the birthplace of Jello. So every year they do a Jello parade in her hometown, and every tiny little village in this country has like one thing that they're known for. And in Leroy, it was the first women's university, the stringless string bean, and Jello. But Jello was their, like their bread and butter. So she's like, I want to do a history of Jello in toy theater in like 5 minutes, and we're going to bring it up to Sandglass for their big festival. We'll do it 8 times. It'll be great. I was utilizing, I mean, I literally sat and absorbed and got really into voice acting when I was a kid. And then when I was a teenager, I practiced voices all the time when I was locked in my bathroom. Babysitters, because we were kind of a rough and rowdy bunch, me and my three siblings. Finally, my parents found a babysitter that could handle us, and her method was locking us in the bathroom for an hour for any transgression. If you tried to escape, it was another hour. So I had nothing to do with make faces and try different voices until I could I could make several different types of fart noises and a burp. I could make myself burp. Uh, those are the experiences that really molded me into the puppeteer I am today. The great thing about toy theater, as Dr. John Bell will tell you, is that it's real easy to make. It's literally just paper. It's flat. You can bring it anywhere, and there's no rules in puppetry in terms of like what the audience can deal with. Like you can set a puppet on fire, you can rip its head off, and with toy theater especially, there's a lot of metaphor. So what is this paper made out of? Is it made out of a newspaper? This political figure, or I think puppeteers have a special relationship with materials because of the metaphor that we can bring to our shows. So yeah, first was toy theater, and then because Z was really into Mr. Rogers as a child, that was her when we decided to do a puppet company together. She's like, I want to do Mr. Rogers style, Punch and Judy style. I want to do traditional non-moving mouth hand puppets, aka glove puppets. And I've fallen in love with that since. And our early shows, I'm sure we were not great, but in our country, there's not as much of a history of puppetry. Like, there's a lot of like amazing puppetry that has come in, but American audiences have no. I should say it's getting better over time, but there's like this like if you can wiggle a puppet around, everyone will say, "Ooh, oh wow." So one of my goals as I've gotten better and I've started to teach and really wrote out the rules of how to be great at this particular form is I want to uplift not just the level of skill of puppeteers in this country, which by the way, I want to give a huge shout out to Paul Vincent Davis, and that was his exact goal as well. But I also want to be like, look, if we're all doing great, amazing work, and that's more of like the baseline, what everybody thinks of in puppetry in this country, then that will force by default the next generation to be great too. If the audiences in that we present for already have seen like excellent performances by all kinds of forms, all kinds of puppeteers, then they're going to be expecting that level of quality when they come to a puppet show in 10 years. Like in China, in Taiwan, in Japan, and other countries that have a history of puppetry as a folk arts, and they've really perfected how to do it and how really to make a career out of it. You will find incredible feats of puppetry that I really look up to and respect. And I kind of take their method of being like, look, you got to start them young. When you first have a kid and you feel like, oh, maybe he could be a puppeteer, you got to enroll them right away. You got to immerse them, and you really need to have the manual. And you need to have the tools to be like your baseline great puppeteer. So that's been my goal for teaching puppetry is like, look, I'm going to bring you up to the level I'm at, and then you're going to leapfrog and go beyond that and be incredible.
Yes, puppets for the future.
Mhm.
Good puppetry for the future.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk because you talked about starting this company, which is WonderSpark Puppets with Z. When did you decide that it was time to officially start this company as a company?
So on our way back from Vermont, for my very first performance, I had heard everyone up in Sandglass. There's such a beautiful family up there, up in Vermont, in the middle of nowhere, in Putney, Vermont. They created their own audiences for puppetry. They created their own community, and it's really amazing. And I love to be parts. I love being a part of the family that occasionally goes back. I schlep all their stuff like back up upstate to go be a part of it. Everyone was so encouraging of me to be like, "Oh, you should be a puppeteer. Oh, you were great." That I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I could do this. I could do this." I needed a career change anyway. And Z and I were driving back. It's about like a 4 or 5 hour drive from Vermont to New York City. And she got a call from the woman on a Sobel that she was working for at the time saying, "Actually, I just took a 3 month silent meditative retreat in Indonesia. No more puppets for me. None, none. Would you like to buy my company?" And we said no, but this is the impetus for us to develop our own stuff. So I came up with some ideas. Z built the puppets. I wrote the script that became like our dynamic in it. She was the builder, I'm the writer, and then together we would perform. And I learned so much from going to national puppetry festivals, going to regional festivals, absorbing as much puppetry as I could, seeing shows that I loved, seeing shows that I hated. When you don't like a show, you're sitting there in the audience going with your arms crossed, being like, "Oh God, oh, end it, please." But there's so much to be learned from that moment of like, why don't you like this? What are they trying to do? Is it successful? Is it not successful? What is it about it particular that you don't like, and what would you do differently? I would play that game often when I'm sitting in a show I don't care for. I'm like, all right, what do I do differently? What are they not doing that could be better? That kind of thing. Anything, any kind of like experience in puppetry, use it to make it better. Don't just like let it gloss over you like water off a duck's back. No, you need to like hold on to that that liquid emotion of like, what's going on? How can I make it better? And how can I relate to what I'm doing? So Z and I, we brought together a show. We performed it. I got a website done because I got a degree in multimedia. So I formed a website. It looked like we were a legit company. Somebody called us and said, "Hey, can you perform at my kid's birthday party?" I said, "Yes." Did not tell them it was our very first performance together. We were up at a slam in Boston at the Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts. Amazing theater. And I think it's like going on 40, maybe 50 years now. The oldest puppet theater, what do you got? One of them. And we were driving back and Z was spilling. She's like sewing the costumes for the show that we are going to perform the next day on our way back. And she was spilling. There's this liquid that you can get to stop thread from tearing. Like if you like cut some material, you can like help with the edge. Anyway, it's slightly acidic. I forget the name. That got on the dashboard. It stayed on the dashboard for years and years to come. But yeah, we did our first show together at a birthday party in the basement of a synagogue in Brooklyn in Park Slope. And from there, we just kept going. And because there's the market in New York City is so huge that we were just one of a handful of puppet companies, and everybody can have work. And I'm always telling people, even if you think you're competing against somebody, even if you're like a small town and you're like it's you and another puppeteer, or your magic show and somebody else's magic show, it's better that there's multiple instead of just one. You're not really competing with somebody as much as just like people are talking about what you're doing more. Like there was, for an example, on our street there was a baby clothing shop, and then another baby clothing shop opened up like directly across the street from them, and we performed at that baby clothing shop a couple times and asked the owner like, "Hey, is it like bad that there's direct competition across the street? Does that take anything away from you?" And she said, "No, actually, it's great because people might come and check out what they got and see us across the street and see like, oh, I wonder what they got too." Something Paul Vincent Davis always told us was that our worst competition was bad puppetry, because if you go into a school and you do a terrible job, or you're unprofessional, or you say something sarcastic, or that you just do like a general not bad vibe or bad technique, they're never going to want to book another puppet show ever. Right. But if you come in and do a great show, a show that inspires them, that they love, they're like, wow, this puppetry is an art form. They're going to be jazzed about puppetry, and they're going to look to other companies in their area and be like, oh, maybe we should invite them too. Like, so doing great work can generate not only work for yourself down the line, but can put food on the table for many other puppeteers and puppeteers in the future. We worked at a Bed Bath and Beyond doing shows every other week for years and years, only because the manager, the person in charge of bringing people in, saw puppet shows as a kid in Long Island. So it's always like, no matter what you're bringing to the table, we're part of a tradition. We're parts of something bigger than ourselves. All these other puppeteers that perform for people who are now adults are like bringing it up to you, and like I said, putting food on your table, putting money, putting dollars in your pockets. And I'm so happy to be a part of that. Like, we're really trying every single show. I'm really trying to do my best and learn something, like learn one new thing every single show you do, because if you learn one thing every single time, it's like taking like little baby steps towards the future where you're really great, right? So every single time, especially if you make a mistake, it's the greatest thing in the world. If you forget a puppet at home, we've all done that. If your prop breaks during the show, something unexpected happens, you can't quit, you can't give up, you have to figure a way out of it. And sometimes those are the best ways to get something completely new and unexpected and great into your show that will just last you for years and years and years. Sometimes I would try something and totally fail, especially early on, where I was like, let me try this for a sneeze gag. That did not work. Or the audience wasn't into that. All right, next time, try this. Oh, maybe that could work. A little kernel of something. And so you do show after show after show, working it, working it, working it. Our friend Jim Napolitano, who goes by Nappy, always said, look, you gotta, world premieres are terrible. They're never any good. You got to do a show 100 times in order for it to be really great. And it's true, because if you learn something every time, try something new every single time, you're like, it's like a gemstone and like a rock tumbler. Like, you're eventually gonna like keep chipping away until something you have is amazing. And then after 100 performances, the first time somebody sees it, they're like, oh my god, this person's a genius. Look at this. Look at all this nuanced movement. Look at this script is incredible. Wow, how did you like? Well, you're amazing. Nobody sees like the bottom of the iceberg, which is like rehearsal,
Yeah.
failure, trying, try again. So if there's one thing that our listeners would take away from this, it's like, you gotta fail, you gotta make these mistakes, but in all of those, there's like little nuggets that can help support like what will be an amazing show.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with all of that. And even you mentioned that the very first puppet show you did, you performed the same show 8 times, and I'm sure your eighth performance was better than your first performance, right, of that show. And it's just the
Exactly.
repetition.
Mhm.
Yeah. WonderSpark does all kinds of shows. You do birthday shows, you do folktale shows, you do Jewish puppet shows. I'm wondering, where do most of your bookings come from? I mean, I looked at your website, and there's libraries, there's museums, there's all these great dates coming up. But is it mostly like they book you through your website, or is it word of mouth, or is it showcases, or is it all a combination of all of those?
So currently in 2023, most of our gigs come from word of mouth and being found on the web. Our websites, we go through wix.com, is great for SEO. So SEO, search engine optimization. If you're not doing it actively on your website right now, you got to do it so you can be found. We used pre-pandemic, and I think we're going to start it up again. We used to have an advertising budget where we had just like ads through like Google. Some people, I don't think we really believe in social media ads at the moment, because a lot of those can be bots or just fake. Or anyway, so it's a lot of word of mouth, especially if you want to get into big institutions like public schools or local, like your library system, or even just like the birthday party circuit. You got to have a good reputation, and we kind of like, everything hangs on your reputation. We have yet to. I'm not. So I'm knocking on all the wood. we we only have great reviews, right? And that's the way it's going to stay. But when we do a show, it's got to be at least good, right? You can't go out there and fail if you have a reputation to uphold. You have to be at least good. Maybe your show's not going to be great, but it has to be at least good so you can maintain what you got, right? You always have to be professional. Literally yesterday, we performed at a senior center, this Jewish senior center, and one of the people on the staff, not the person who booked us, not the audience, not any of the people who came up and said what a great job we did. One person on staff was offended that we would take this traditionally hilarious Jewish story that everybody knows is all about being silly and nonsense and like loving the zaniness of it. How dare we do it in a silly way? It's a serious story, Chad. I am offended. And I just had to sit there and listen. I'm like, yep, all right, I'm going to listen to all your criticism. Thank you. I'm not going to argue with you. Nope. I'm not going to give you any reason to flame us online. I'm going to listen to everything you say and I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to learn about like, our, what exactly offended you actually. And like, I want to hear your perspective because I want to know more about like what you're coming to the table with. Never ever argue with somebody and never write anything in an email that you wouldn't want pasted into a review about your company. I knew a couple of people that that happened to, and there were definitely times early on in our career where I so wanted to say things that I did not because I knew that would be the result. They're going to take what you said and they're going to paste it in a 0-star review and say, look at this person, look at what he said. Oof, and you can never recover from a bad reputation. When I worked in corrections, the this officer used to say at this training center, he said, like, integrity is not like a paycheck, right? You can't just get another one next week. No, once your integrity is gone, it ain't coming back, or it's like really hard to get back, especially in this day and age where there's all these kind of like gotcha moments happening all around us where everyone is so keen to, I'm not going to say like cancel people, but like if there's anything, any kind of scandal or anything terrible, that word gets around real quick in our current age of social media.
Excellent. Well, WonderSpark has also performed at a bunch of festivals, and we'll be talking about the national festival here in a second. But you've been at the International Puppet Fringe Festival and Puppet Homecoming. What are your tips for puppeteers who want to submit their shows to festivals?
Do it. Just do it. Performing or doing a workshop or running a workshop at a show is the easiest way to get into that festival. John Tartaglia and Philip Huber both got their start at a national festival, the P of A Festival, and so many others, including myself, were so inspired by everything we saw. Just do it. Submit what you got. Doesn't matter if you don't have faith in it or you feel like it's I didn't do my 100 performances yet. Just do it. You might get in, and that's like an easy way in, right? There are scholarships to a lot of these festivals. Even the Chicago International Puppetry Festival, they do online workshops. They're doing scholarships for that too. And you can, if you feel like you can't get in or it's too expensive or I'm not sure, just email somebody on staff, email anybody and be like, hey, I'm not sure what to do, blah, blah, blah. Puppeteers are some of the most supportive people in arts that you can ever find. I want to say, I always tell people like 99% of the community is amazing. Everyone is so open. And when I made mistakes early on in my career, other puppeteers were so nice and kind of brave too to tell me actually don't do that. And this is why. So yeah, I'll put that out there. If anybody ever has any questions, like if you want me to look at your stuff or say like, hey, I'm starting out or anything like that, I'm here for you, man. We're all here for you. Ask your local puppeteers. Go to your local puppet guild if you have one. And these festivals are just invaluable. So Teatro Sea at the Clemente Theater in the Lower East Side of Manhattan run this festival every other year and it's incredible. They get these all these amazing international acts, and the Manuel Moran, who's the leader down there, he produces his own work that they premiere there. And at every festival, at the International Puppetry Fringe Festival down there, has had a lot of local acts, like a lot of like really solid New York City puppet shows and puppet companies. So we saw our friends at Drama of Works, at Chinese Theater Works, we were there, Great Small Works, like the usual suspects are usually there, which I love. It's more like a regional festival with great international acts. But every time you go to a festival, you see something, you're bringing something away, and it's a great place to network and meet new people. The workshops, especially at this upcoming national festival, are invaluable. This is the only place sometimes where you can get professional training in puppetry. So every time there's a national festival, I feel like all the attendees, that's like their number one thing is look, yeah, I'm going to see some shows, I'm going to meet my old friends, like a family reunion, but really I'm all about the workshops. Let me, like, if I may, I'm going to tell you, I'm super excited for some of the workshops at the upcoming national festival down in DC this summer. So, like, I think it's like July 2023. So, there's workshops that are just one-offs. Like, I'm doing a hand puppet workshop that's like a one-off, so anybody can come. There's a glove puppet workshop from the UK from the Curious School of Puppetry that I'm so excited for. Howard Gayton is running it, and it's like a 4-day workshop where you can really get invested in technique, and especially from, like the Curious School is a professional school for puppeteers in England. So I'm so excited to see what he's bringing. There's also puppets in therapy, like I'm reading the thing, using diverse psychoeducational and psychotherapeutic puppets. Like, there are professionals who have been doing that as their career, and if I could just be, like, close to them and just glean a little bit of what they're bringing to the table, it's so interesting and so fascinating. Like, when you use a hand puppet with a child, especially like a child on the spectrum, or even like they've gone through some trauma, like, this is a tool that can really help if you're a puppeteer or a teacher or a parent or a therapist. Like, I want to be able to take these tools, take the knowledge from these professionals and like hand it to people. So I'm so excited to take those workshops and be a part of the big puppetry family reunion happening at the National Festival this July.
Excellent. Well, that's a great segue. You will also be presenting, in addition to the workshop, your show Fox Fables there as well.
That's right. Fox Fables is, for me, it's like a very meaningful show. So I'm so happy to bring it there. I performed it at Dragon Con, and that was like kind of like showing people down south in the National Center at the Center for Puppetry Arts, like, hey, look, this is me. Fox Fables is, I took the writings of this amazing, beloved, unknown storyteller, the Rabbi Berechiah HaNaktan, who's like an 11th century rabbi in France, who is well known as being an incredible storyteller. And he would take Aesop's fables and kind of like turn them into whatever he was talking about that day, like for his sermon or his drash. So he would do like a little bit of a moral at the end of each fable that kind of tied into whatever the Torah was talking about that day. And I took some of you can read his work today. It's been preserved for all time. Some of his stories where he just like tells these Ace of Fables and gives his little musings at the end. So I took some of what he had written, kind of like churned it into like this longer story. It's the story, the greater story is like the story of the fox who lost his tail, which is an Aesop's fable. But I took that from the original moral being like, don't trust people who are just trying to drag you down to their level, like, and took it more about like a story about identity. And hey, if you lose something really important to yourself, are you the same person? Which, by the way, anytime we perform that for a Jewish audience, everybody understands what we're talking about, because the Jewish people, as a group, have been, oppressed and kicked out of places and had stuff taken away, for 5,000 years. So it's a show that I can do for Jewish audiences, and there's special meaning there. But then there's also a show I can, just perform for secular audiences, for audiences like schools and libraries, and there's no like religiosity to it. There's no Hebrew, or you don't have to have any kind of like special knowledge about Jewish culture. It's just an Aesop's fable, about loss and identity. But like I said, like there's a special meaning for Jewish audiences, and we perform for Orthodox and conservative and Reform Jews, the whole spectrum of Judaism. But that's kind of like where I wanted to go was, I want to have cultural shows that are Jewish shows, but I can perform it for a regular audience, and maybe they don't need to understand that it's truly a religious show. That kind of fits who I am and who we are as people. Like, we're not super religious, but we're part of the Jewish community. So I felt like early on, I was trying and failing to come up with like a nice balance of like how I feel about religion and doing religious shows, or like shows for religious people, or we're in a religious context. So that was like my way in, was like, hey, this is not super religious. But then guess what? Over time, those audiences didn't need a super religious show as long as it applied somewhat to what they were doing. They just wanted a good show. And that's like everybody. Everybody just wants a good show. You know, they want to hear a
Yeah.
good story. They want to see something interesting, and that's what puppetry can bring.
Well, I watched earlier today before our interview, I watched the trailer that you have, which I will link to in the show notes for this episode, for Fox Fables. And one of the things I loved about it was that one of the shots was kind of from backstage in the trailer showing how you perform. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about this puppet booth that you perform with, because a lot of times when I go to library shows or things like that, I don't see this sort of specific puppet booth, and I think it's really cool. And so I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Just like how there's any number of ways to do hand puppetry. You know, you could use one finger in the head, two, three. There's any number of ways to make a puppet booth. So what Z Briggs did early on in our career was she was like, all right, I'm going to find uh, old photographs of puppet booths or even just paintings of puppet booths. So she found she could scroll through eBay looking at old postcards, old paintings, old photos of puppet booths, and kind of glean a little bit like how it was designed. We had some puppeteers show us theirs, but it's kind of like our needs were very specific. We needed a booth that I could put on my back in like a backpack and walk up 3 flights of stairs. For in New York City, there's not often elevators, and sometimes you got to take a show on the subway, so you have to have everything pretty light. So we took our background as filmmakers. We went to B&H, which is this very famous New York City Orthodox Jewish run warehouse space. That's also a store. It's incredible. You got to look it up.
Oh, I order stuff from B&H all the time, so I'm
Ah,
right there with you.
in the actual store, they have these conveyor belts running over your head, which is very interesting with plastic tubs with orders that have gone from the show floor to where you have to check out. It's this fascinating, and there's like candy like placed throughout the store. It's fascinating. You gotta go. It's like a little tourist attraction. So we went there into the filmmaking area, which we had gone to many times because we were filmmakers. We created a lot of shorts for the web and films, and she stood there focused, thinking with all the knowledge that she had gained, all like the her knowledge of how to build a puppet booth and what to use. And then she started to look at different things. She's like, okay, I'm going to take a photographer's lighting stand. Yeah, got that. Okay, I'm going to take these very light but strong clamps from over here that you would use for this filmmaking project. Boom. And she kind of like took a bunch of different things, brought it back, got some wood that we just had like scrap wood lying around, and built our very first puppet booth that we still use today. It's only 30 pounds and it's up quick, it's down quick. It's not one of those like expanding ones like you would get from like an ad presentation or like a convention presentation that some people use. It's unique and very interesting, and I'm happy to show anybody how it works. In fact, the thing that's going to be part of the great thing about festivals is after the show, all the puppeteers come up on stage and ask like, "Hey, how'd you do this?" And I like doing this. Can I see this? And so I'm happy to unveil the stage and show everybody how it works. We did that at a local guild meeting, or our local guild Pagogny, where I was like, "This is how I build the stage. Any questions?" Everybody came up, touched it, talked about it, and that's how we learn. Is like taking what somebody else did, like being inspired by somebody, thinking, "Oh man, it's a good idea," and then like kind of forming it into your own thing.
Yeah, I love, and as you mentioned earlier in the interview, the puppetry community, for the most part, is very open.
Mm.
Like you're not going to get somebody to go, "No, this is my top secret. You can't look at this." And speaking of that, because I did want to get this in here as well, is you recently wrote and published a book called "50 Hand Puppet Techniques: Hidden Secrets and Tricks Revealed." Where did you get the idea to write this book and get it put out?
Thank you for asking. So it's World Puppetry Day coming up March 21st of 2023, and I'm actually going to receive an award for that book, the Nancy Staub Award from UNIMA USA for excellence in writing and puppetry. Thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you, and thank you to all the committee members. Thank you to UNIMA USA. Thank you for this great honor. I told my mom, "Mom, I'm an award-winning author, Mom." So I learned from so many incredible puppetry mentors, right? but we age and we die. And puppeteers, they get old. You can't use your hands as well. It's harder to pass on this specific knowledge. And I was looking at our puppet library because all puppeteers have a puppetry library. We all collect and hoard puppet books, right? So, what I first used when I first started learning hand puppetry was Paul Vince Davis participated in this book called Making Puppets Come Alive. There's I think Larry and oh man, I'm forgetting the actual authors of the book. My apologies. I learned a lot from that book, but it was kind of dated. It was black and white. There was a lot of text. My brain can't process huge chunks of text. So I wanted to, and I had more to give. I wasn't just rehashing everything that they had done in this book and that was published in like 1970. So it'd been 50 years, but I was like, I learned more and I want to incorporate that into this book to raise everybody up, right? We get contacted by puppeteers, by teachers asking us, like, hey, where can I get this knowledge? So during the pandemic, I was like, hey, I'm going to create a series of videos about how to do basic hand puppetry and kind of showcase this technique. At the same time, I had started to teach, we ran like an internship here where I was like, "Come into our place once a week and I will show you over like 3 months how to do hand puppetry," right? And through teaching, I really hammered down exactly what my techniques were for me because I would just do it without thinking, right? And I was like, "Huh, maybe there's only so many ways you can move your fingers, actually. Why don't I write those down?" And I remember Wawa Zong, who's one of my mentors, like doing this very specific thing that I thought was handy. I'll write that down. And then so I had this running spreadsheet going to all these different tabs of like all these tips and tricks that I was teaching to the interns and puppetry students anyway. And I was like, I should just do a book. So I am a designer and like I said, I have a degree in multimedia. So been using Photoshop for every single day for 23 years. So I was like, I got this. I can do this. So I made this book. I wrote it in a week over a holiday break and then over like a month designed it and really felt like, okay, now I have like like if I was going to teach like a college level course, this is the course curriculum. It's broken down into like 4 easy chapters about how to do these techniques and the very fundamentals of hand puppetry that I teach all the time. And our internship program has blossomed into this amazing thing where I'm teaching all the time now. We run it seasonally, so every 3 months we get a new crop of new puppeteers, and some of them are teachers, EMTs, puppeteers from other country, puppeteers who specialize in other forms who want to learn hand puppetry. We're going to do it at the Henson Carriage House starting in April. We've gone from like one person to two people to four, and now we are teaching at least six. The demand is out there, and I'm so happy to be able to bring what I do to everybody and to say, like, look, take it, take it all, take it and go with it. You never know who's going to be the next so and so. Like people are saying, hey man, just like Paul Vincent Davis, really back in the 70s, everyone was so impressed with his technique and he shared so much with everyone. He was the first puppeteer in America to really say, actually, no guys, two fingers in the head, period. Not one, two, and this is why. And his technique was so incredible. Everyone was like, "Oh, I guess two fingers in the head is the way to go." I'm the same, where I'm like, "Hey guys, you can do one in the head, like European or Budaishi, but two fingers is let me pitch you on two fingers. You use every single finger in your hand. You're not like hiding a couple in like the costume of the puppet. You're not just using one pinky or one to be like one arm. You got two fingers together, the ring and the pinky. They're so strong, great for picking up props. And if you're going to use hand puppetry, I prefer that style. And so the book is kind of like a pitch for like, hey, this is why I use this, and I'm writing down everything. The one thing that I felt like I brought to the table was adapting Budaishi styles to hand puppetry, right? So taking Budaishi is like the traditional Chinese hand puppetry. And I was trained in that by my friends at Chinese Theater Works back when I worked for them for a time. And I was like, you know what? Their philosophy about how the puppet moves and walks and the archetype characters with that movement from Chinese Peking opera, like we can use that too, you know? So I have a whole chapter on walks about like, hey, if you have just a regular standard puppet walk that you're using for your hand puppet, guess what? Why don't we change that up? And that can tell us so much about each individual character. You can have a very feminine walk, like an old person walk, like a warrior walk. There's so much in there that we can just borrow from our friends across the pond. I did the same thing with Mr. Punch. Punch and Judy is such an amazing tradition from the UK, and we can absolutely steal those centuries old gags that everyone has been passing down and passing down, passing down. You can incorporate them in scenes and gags that you're using in your hand puppet shows too. So I'm actually writing a sequel to this book, more advanced hand puppetry right now, and it's like so much longer. It's at least 200 pages at this point. It's crazy, but I'm putting the whole kitchen sink and explaining point for point how to do these specific gags from Punch and Judy because they're so good. They're really funny. They're centuries old, so there's no copyright on gags. You know, if it's like from like 300 years ago, and I want these to live on. You know, like all these amazing techniques that we can pull together to make like a cool, unique style of our own, which is a very American thing to do. I want that to go on to the next generation for them to take all that and then go further.
Excellent. Well, I will have a link to the book in the show notes for this as well. And as we wrap up here, Chad, I would like to ask, and I always ask this at the end of every episode, what has been the highlight of your puppetry career so far?
Oh God. I've no idea. Every day that I wake up and I'm like, wow, my body's feeling good, and I get to perform today. Oh, it's a great day. It's a great life. It's a great career. I'm looking at, and I've always looked at puppeteers who retire and thought about like, all right, how am I going to do that? And teaching puppetry is definitely where I'm going. So once I can't perform anymore, I'm just going to be teaching puppetry as long as somebody will listen. You know, so I think an incredible highlight is discovering it's very satisfying to work on technique. I love that about this job. And there's because we're not just on like Broadway or something where you see the same exact type of audience every single time. We're mobile entertainers, right? We're going out into different spaces, which means you always have different problems to solve, different dynamics, right? Different people. Overcoming those challenges is so incredibly satisfying. And outside of just performing and feeling like I'm a good puppeteer or I'm a good scriptwriter or whatever, really connecting with the audience and overcoming the challenges that come with live performance and really feeling like oh, I'm a credit to this form right now because is great. Hand puppetry is amazing because you can tell a story. The puppets are silly by style. Like this, the form is just incredibly silly to see these tiny little creatures doing their thing. It's their hand puppets are great for violence and slapstick and interacting with a crowd. And that's all the things that I've grown to really love about it. So I was telling David Zrodiak, like, I'm terrible with marionettes. I'm awful with other forms, but give me like a tabletop puppets, give me a hand puppets. I can excel because I put so many hours in. Where this is year 13 for me for being a puppeteer, and I feel like not only is it satisfying to do, but I can really give back to the community that helped us so much along the way. And like I said, like the puppeteers who were kind enough and brave enough to tell me when I was messing up and that I shouldn't do certain things. Liz Joyce comes to mind. She was an amazing mentor for us early on. She ran us. She still runs her puppet company, Goat on a Boat, out in Sag Harbor, Long Island, way out in the Hamptons. And she was one of the very first places that have us over multiple times to perform in her theater, which is the basement of a church at the time. And she's like, Chad, you're showing too much skin when you're doing your tabletop shows, you got to cover up. I said, oh yeah, you're right, absolutely. And she's like, Chad, you can't use like, even though it might be okay sometimes to bring in like a stuffed animal, you can't do that. You got to build your own puppets. Like, I know. Thank you, thank you. Like, Chad, you do too many farty noises. It turns into the farty show. You just use one fart, please. It's like, oh, okay, all right, thank you, Liz. So she definitely comes to mind as somebody who kicked my butt in a very pleasant way early on. And Wawa as well. Wawa is a legend. If you don't know her, her name is spelled Hua. Wawa Zong. She is one of America's legendary puppeteers. Her technique is without peer. She came from a background of rod puppetry in China and suffering under an awful teacher who really made her like the steel. Like, she was molded through her experience of like suffering through a teacher who was terrible. But those who survived were these legendary puppeteers who could like hold their arms up in position, who could put a smile on their face and leap through the air while doing their puppet at the same time. And she really kicked my butt hard when I was like 7 years in. She showed me really that I thought I was pretty good, but no, actually, I had so much further to go. And those types of people in your life, the ones who are like, look, I'm going to be kind to you, and my kindness is in the form of I'm going to put you down. I'm going to put you down. And show you actually the level between where you are and where you think you are can be a great distance. That's very helpful.
Well, Chad, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the 2023 festival and checking out Foxtails.
Thanks so much. Yeah, everybody should come to the National Festival. It's the first one we've had in such a long time. It's going to be amazing. And they do offer a payment plan if you feel like it's too expensive to go. If you can't come to the National Festival, there's regional festivals happening all around us. And Teatro Sea, we applied to get into the International Fringe Festival in, I think it's August in New York City. If you didn't get in, we're just going to go because it's such an incredible one. So thank you, Grant, so much. Thank you to all your listeners for everything. Woo, I got to go drink some water, but thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Chad Williams for being on the show. For a link to Chad's work and WonderSpark puppets, check out the show notes for this episode number 82, over at underthepuppet.com. And if you'd like to hear even more of my talk with Chad Williams, download the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android and click on the gift icon in the listing for this episode. And if you'd like to see Chad Williams perform live at the 2023 National Puppetry Festival happening July 18th through the 22nd at the University of Maryland, head over to puppeteers.org for more information and to register. We'll see you there. Now it's time to announce the winner of episode 81's giveaway for the 2022 Jim Henson Company Holiday Gift. The question was, what emoji did Paul Lewis say his face resembled the first day he saw some of the puppets on the show's Sweet Tooth? And the answer was the hard eyes emoji. And the winner is Rafi Levavi. Congratulations, Rafi. Your prize is on the way. Now it's time for this episode's giveaway, and it is for a copy of Chad Williams' book, 50 Hand Puppet Techniques, Hidden Secrets, and Tricks Revealed. To be entered to win, simply answer this question from the episode you just heard. What was the topic of the first puppet piece Chad ever performed in? When you find the answer, send it in an email to underthepuppet@gmail.com with the subject line giveaway, and you'll be entered to win. All entries for this giveaway must be received by April 15th, 2023. One entry per household, and due to recent issues shipping prizes to the winner, these giveaways are now only open to those listeners with a mailing address in the United States of America. The winner will be chosen at random from all correct entries and be announced on the May 2023 episode of the show. Good luck! I want to send a special thank you out to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Andrew Calcagno, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, and Vicky Sebring. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media, and thank you for your support. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, call our voicemail line at 818-806-9604. Or click the Call the Show button in the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. You can also send feedback via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram, Twitter, or our new Facebook page by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2023 Saturday Morning Media Grandpa Choco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. Under the Puppet proudly presents The Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.